Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty fundamental shift in business strategy, and it's all because of AI. We're going to move past all the hype and try to understand how the very idea of competitive advantage is being completely rewritten. So let's start with the core thesis here. We're living in a world that is just saturated with AI. Intelligence itself is fast becoming a commodity, like electricity or water. And when that happens, the source of power changes. It stops being about who has the most intelligence and starts being about who shapes and controls how that intelligence flows.
To really get a handle on where we're headed, we first have to look back at the world we're leaving behind. For most of human history, everything, our organizations, our hierarchies, our entire economic models, they were all built to solve one central problem: the scarcity of knowledge. How do you find it? How do you protect it? And how do you scale it?
All right, so let's get into our first major idea, the end of scarcity. We're talking about how AI has completely flipped this old paradigm on its head. We're moving from a world defined by scarcity to one defined by abundance. I mean, just think about it for a second. For generations, the whole point of a company was to find experts, create systems of credentials, and then build these complex processes just to manage that scarce expertise. That entire model, the very foundation of the modern organization, it's just becoming obsolete and fast. See, intelligence isn't just in our heads anymore. It's in the code. It's accessible to pretty much anyone. It's cheap to deploy, and it's being woven into the very fabric of our systems. So the main challenge for any organization, it's just not about acquiring intelligence anymore. The real question is, how do you operate effectively when it's literally everywhere? And that brings us to the really crucial point. When everyone can drink from the same well of knowledge, just having the knowledge gives you zero edge. The whole game shifts. Advantage moves away from just owning information to governing its use, to directing its application toward very specific, very valuable outcomes. Okay, next up, the illusion of progress. Let's talk about a really common misconception here. The idea that the most visible, the most flashy applications of AI are the ones creating the most value. Turns out, that's almost never the case. What are the things we always see first? Well, it's the chatbots, right? The personalization layers, the really fluent user experiences. But here's the thing. Those are almost always the easiest things to copy. They spread like wildfire, and before you know it, they're just commonplace. They're not a real advantage. And this really highlights a critical split between what looks intelligent and what actually creates economic value. On the surface, you've got the stuff that gets all the attention, the fluent interfaces, the replicable features. But the real, durable advantage, that's built way deeper. It's in the less sexy but way more powerful decision structures. We're talking about things like pricing and risk rules. So this forces us to ask a really fundamental question. If all that visible stuff just becomes table stakes, the minimum you need to even play the game, then where is value actually created? Where do you build a deep, lasting, and truly defensible advantage? And that brings us to the very heart of this new paradigm, the Great Inversion. This is a massive shift in thinking, away from just getting more raw intelligence and toward the deliberate, strategic use of constraints. So the old model of advantage was super simple, right? Just acquire scarce knowledge. The goal was linear, no more than the other guy. See further, analyze more data, hire more experts. The logic was just more intelligence is always better. But the new advantage, it's about governing abundant knowledge. It's almost the exact opposite. The real leverage now comes from defining the boundaries, the rules, the guardrails that dictate how all that abundant knowledge is allowed to act.
And this is such a critical distinction to make. Unbounded intelligence just produces output, not outcomes. Without limits, an AI just generates this endless ocean of options, suggestions, and analyses. And that doesn't create clarity. It creates chaos. You get fragmented action, blurred priorities. Suddenly, the bottleneck isn't a lack of intelligence anymore. It's a lack of direction.
And this is really where that great inversion becomes crystal clear. Constraint stops being a limitation and becomes the mechanism that turns abundance into leverage. Things like guardrails, thresholds, strategic policies, they actually become more valuable than the raw speed or volume of the AI itself. Think of it like this. Constraint is what takes the wild fire hose of AI-generated possibilities and focuses it into a powerful, directed beam. Okay, so as we keep automating intelligence, we inevitably run up against the one thing that for now remains scarce and uniquely human, the architecture of judgment. And, of course, the accountability that has to come with it.
Look, an AI can generate options all day long. It can suggest a new price, it can recommend a diagnosis, it can even draft a legal contract. But what it can't do is own the consequences. A machine can't be held responsible when things go wrong. A human, a person, still has to be the one to decide which risks are acceptable and which trade-offs are worth making.
And that judgment isn't just something that happens in the heat of the moment. It's actually baked into the design of the system from the very beginning. So you have to ask questions like this. Who can override a recommendation? That's not a technical question. That's an architectural choice. It's how you embed your strategy and your power structure right into the code.
Here's another one. When does a decision escalate? Again, this isn't an operational detail, it's a fundamental architectural decision. By setting those thresholds for when a human needs to step in, you're defining the boundary between automation and oversight. You are literally codifying your organization's risk tolerance into the system, long before any single decision gets made.
And maybe this is the most important question of them all. Which outcomes are we actually optimizing for? Is the AI built to chase short-term revenue at all costs? Or is it optimizing for something harder to measure, like long-term customer trust, or maybe operational stability? That choice, that's where you encode your core values right into your operations. And that choice will determine whether AI leads you to stable, sustainable growth or just chaotic volatility.
Because ultimately, accountability cannot be automated. It's the bedrock. Truly knowing who is responsible when the system gets it wrong, that's what gives an organization the confidence to learn, to adapt, and to move forward. Without those clear lines of accountability, these powerful automated systems don't just become ineffective, they become brittle and, frankly, dangerous.
So let's bring this all together. What does this mean for actually building a durable advantage in an age of abundance? Where should we be focusing our energy? The things that are going to endure, well, it's not going to be about having the newest AI model or the slickest interface. Advantage is going to concentrate in the deep operational structures, the decision environments you build, the objectives you encode, the constraints you enforce, and, crucially, the checkpoints you design for human judgment. These are the things that are hard to build, and they are damn near impossible to copy. So in the end, intelligence is no longer the scarce resource. The real question is which paths you allow it to take. The future isn't going to belong to whoever has the smartest system. It's going to belong to those who are deliberate and thoughtful about evolving how that intelligence is allowed to act. So the fundamental question for any leader today has changed. It's no longer how do we get more intelligence, it's how do we design the architecture of its judgment.